Say tonight's class in the memory of Ibn Yosef. So we're going to talk about two ladies that are not so known in the. They're known. If you look in the Torah, they're known, and yet they're. This is fine. And yet they play a very important role in Judaism, and even though they play a very important role in Judaism, somehow they. Not somehow. I'll talk about it. Okay. So what's the story of this week's Torah reading? Yaakov is running away from this whole thing. Is falling. Whatever it is. What it is. Yaakov. I'll just leave it because it's going to make it worse. I don't know. Good question. So I also have a problem. Those that are watching, for some reason, the camera decided, Facebook decided I can't do sideways this week. So it's like, see my whole beautiful belly. Okay. It's whatever. It's just like when your head is like not able to like deal with whatever. It's okay. So Yaakov is running away from his brother Esau that wants to kill him. Right? We all know the story. We talked about it at great length on Shabbos. Esau wants to kill his brother. He runs away. And he comes to his Charan, to his uncle Lavan. The first person he actually meets is Rachel. Rachel's his cousin. He meets her by the well, yeah. Lavan is the brother of Rivka, and Yaakov is the son of Rivka. And when Yaakov comes to Charan, where Lavan lives, he comes to the well. Besuel is the father of Lavan, and the father of Rivka, that's the grandfather. So Lavan had passed, Besuel had passed away, but Yaakov came to the well. At the well, all the shepherds were gathered around. They were waiting around for all the shepherds to gather to move the stone. And then when he sees Rachel coming with the sheep of her father, he felt such a tremendous, overwhelming love for Rachel. It was love at first sight. He immediately, first he rolls off the stone of the well single-handedly. He removes the entire top of the stone. He gives water to her sheep, and after that, he gives her a kiss, and she's a little like, "Who are you?" And he says, "I'm Yaakov, the son of Rivka, the son of your cousin," and she runs to tell her father. The Torah says, which is a sign that her mother had passed away. She was an orphan. Her mother was not alive, which is why she would tell her father, not her mother. Anyway, we all know this part of the story. This is the famous part. Yaakov tells Lavan, "I want to marry your daughter." She said, "Okay, no problem. Work for 7 years, and you can marry her."
It's not Lavan's daughter.
It's Lavan's daughter.
Yes.
Rachel and Leah are the daughters of Lavan. Yeah, that's the daughters of Lavan. What's daughters of Lavan? Besuel is the father of Rivka. You keep on going back a generation. Besuel was before Rivka got married. Rivka's not married. Now she has kids. It's the next generation. It's on the age of you forget. So anyway, so Rivka, sorry, we gotta get clean with Rivka. So Lavan says, "Sure, you can work for my daughter Rachel for 7 years and you can marry her." Why he makes her work 7 years? Whatever, not for today's discussion. After 7 years, they go to the chuppah, and what does Lavan do? He switches around the girls. He puts the older one, Leah, instead of Rachel. He finds out in the morning he's very upset. He says to Lavan, "How could you trick me?" He says, "That's not what we do in this place, to marry the younger one before the older one. Wait a week, you can marry Rachel too. I'll give you both girls and you'll work another 7 years." Yaakov was a trick. So Yaakov works and marries Rachel. Now, Yaakov has a lot of, what? A week later and worked 7 years after the marriage. Now, Leah is having kids. Yaakov and Leah are intimate, and Leah gives birth to Reuven, and then to Shimon, and then to Levi, and then to Yehuda. A lot of children are being born. However, Rachel is not having any kids. And to Rachel, this is the most painful experience to watch her sister getting all the kids. And obviously there was nothing she wanted more than to have children, to be able to be part of building up the Jewish people. And they knew they were prophetesses. And they knew that the 12 tribes would be born to Jacob. And here she sees her sister's having all the kids, and she's not having any of them. And after 4 kids, she realizes soon I won't even have a quarter of the tribes if something does not change. So what happens? Here we come to chapter 29. Let's open up chapter 29, verse number 1. And Rachel saw that she had not borne any children to Jacob, and Rachel envied her sister. And she said to Jacob, give me children, and if not, I am dead. Very strong words. A woman that's in pain, you try and explain why women dramatic language when they're in pain. You see it here in the Bible. So it's, any man that's wondering, that's the way it's always been. So Rachel is in deep pain. She says, give me children, and if not, I'm like that. Yaakov gets upset at her. And Yaakov says, it's not my place to give you children. I have children. It's not me that's being punished here. It's you. You got to figure out. You got to pray to God. We'll talk about that soon. So finally, Rachel says, we'll read Rashi in a second. You'll see the story, the backstory. So in verse number 3, Rachel says, here is my maidservant Bilha. Come to her, and she will bear children on my knees, so that I too will be built up from her. Simply, what is she saying? Take my maid, whose name is Bilha. We'll get to who she is soon. Let's just read the story first. Take my maid Bilha, come to her, be intimate with her, have children with her. The children that she will conceive and give birth to, I will raise them on my knees as if they're my children. I'll kind of adopt them and raise them, and I will be built up. So too, I too will be built up from her. Like a surrogate mom, both to conceive and to carry. But yes, that's correct. Like a surrogate. Now Rashi says something very interesting. He says, so that I too will be built up. What does it mean, so too? What does it mean, I too will be built up? So she said to him, here's the dialogue that happens in these verses Rashi tells us. Your grandfather Abraham, so what she's saying to Yaakov, to her husband, one night when having an argument in the bedroom. Your grandfather Abraham, he had sons from Hagar, and yet even though he already had a child from Hagar, he still girded his loins, meaning he prayed fervently on behalf of Sarah to have children. He didn't say, well, I have kids, so you go pray for yourself. He wasn't so selfish. So just like Abraham had kids, Ishmael, he still prayed for a child from Sarah, you should too. So Yaakov responds to his wife and he says, it's not the same. My grandmother brought her rival into her house. How did Avram have children from Hagar? Because Sarah, who was the mistress over Hagar, told Avram, take my maid and maybe you'll have children with her. She showed absolute complete selflessness by giving her own maid, instead of being a maid, now to be like an equal and to be a competition in the family, in the house. That's not easy for a woman to introduce competition into your marriage, especially when you're previously your maid. It's not like, that can't be easy for Sarah to do. And she did it. So when Rachel heard this, she said, if this is the matter of holding things up, here is my maidservant, and I too will be built up, just like Sarah was built up through giving Hagar, her maid, to Abraham. So too I will be built up by giving my maid, Bilha, to my husband, Yaakov. So the Torah continues, verse number 4. So she gave him her maidservant, Bilha, for a wife, and Jacob came to her. And Bilha conceived, and she bore Jacob a son. Notice who names the son. Not the mother, Bilha. Not the surrogate mother, we should say rather. But the kind of adoptive mother. Rachel names the child Dan. Why? God has judged me. The Nani Alekim. God has judged me. He's also hearkened to my voice. He's given me a son. So she named him Dan. One day we'll do a class on Dan, but that's not for right now. Then Bilha, Rachel's maidservant, conceived again, and she bore Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, with divine bonds I have been joined to my sister. I have also prevailed. Because the word Naphtali is the word Naftule Elikim. He bound me together like tefillin, or straps that are bound on your arm. So I've been bound to my husband through my surrogate, through my maid, who's now married to Yaakov, having children. And therefore, I too am part of the family. And I've kind of earned my place, so to say, at the the metaphorical table, because I too have children. Okay? So Leah has 4 kids. Rachel has 2 kids through her maid Bilha. What happens next? When Leah saw that she had stopped bearing children, she took her maidservant Zilpah and she gave her maid to Jacob as a wife. So she also has a maid. Her maid is Zilpah. And she says, let me give my maid too. Because she stopped. She offered it. It's not fair.
It's not right.
In those days, they used to marry 2 women.
So,
He's got plenty.
well, this is one of the 4. He has 2 wives, 2 sisters, and now he has 1 maid, and now he's getting a second maid. So it's 4. So hold your thought, and we'll address it. Leah agrees with you.
Yeah, because Leah's trying to make it more for her.
Yeah. Leah, no, because Leah stopped having kids. She was getting pregnant right away. She's having kids. Now she's not getting pregnant anymore. So she says, obviously, I should also give children with this maid. Now, I before I even wait for further, I should clarify that, as I already mentioned, the mothers, all of the matriarchs, were tremendous prophetesses. They were prophetesses. And they knew that there would be 4 wives from which 12 sons will be born. They knew that. That's why she prayed that Dinah should be changed from a boy to a girl, whatever. Leah knew. So on the simple level, why did Leah do it? Because Leah knew that there's going to be 4 maids, and this is the way that the story was meant to take place. But hold your thought, why did Yaakov do that? Because you'll see that Leah, according to an interesting commentary, was actually very upset at her husband for saying yes. Okay? Something very interesting that I never knew till, it's too Rashi, but I never paid attention to it till now. So now that Leah gave her maid, Zilpah, to Yaakov as a wife as well. So, verse number 10, Zilpah, Leah's maidservant, bore Jacob a son. Turn the page over. And Zilpah bore. What is his name? Okay, you'll notice it does not say she conceived. I'll tell you something very interesting. And you're going to remember this when I tell you about their ages soon. But their order. I'm going to tell you now. Zilpah was the youngest of all of them. If you read through what Rashi says over here, if you look, before that, if you look at verse number 5. And look at verse number 7. What does it say in verse number 5? And Bilha conceived and she bore Jacob a son. Verse number 7 says, and Bilha conceived and bore Jacob a second son. What does verse number 10 say? And Zilpah bore Jacob a son. The fact that she conceived is not there. Maybe she was like a Virgin Mary, perhaps. Or was like a virgin. She didn't conceive. She just had a baby. You're confused. Never mind. The verse doesn't say she conceived. So why does it not say she conceived? I'm being facetious. I'm joking.
I'm thinking there's other people that think, oh, she's a virgin and she has.
I was making a joke. Okay.
I didn't sleep last night.
Okay. So why does it say only that Zilpah bore without saying that she conceived? So Rashi tells us that she was very, very young. And because she was the youngest of all the 4 wives, therefore her pregnancy was not noticed. She was so young that she became pregnant, and you couldn't tell she was pregnant. And all of a sudden, one day, she's in labor. It happens. I don't know. It doesn't say an age. So I don't know an age. I actually looked. It doesn't say they were an age, how old these girls were. Even Rachel, we don't know at all how old Rachel or Leah were either. Torah does not give us. No, that's Rivka. Rachel, and even that's not in the Torah. That's commentary. But the Torah doesn't say anywhere how old any of these girls are at these times in the story, so it's hard to know an exact. But the point is that in order, here's what I want to show you. In order to deceive Jacob, Lavan gave her to Leah so he would not perceive that they were bringing in Leah. For this was their custom, to give the older maid to the older daughter and the younger maid to the younger daughter. So let me explain to you what Rashi is saying over here. Lavan has 2 daughters. And Lavan has 2 maids for these 2 daughters. Okay? The older maid is meant to be with the older daughter. The younger maid is meant to be with the younger daughter. So when Yaakov is standing under the chuppah, or who he thinks is going to be his wife, which is the younger daughter, Rachel, who does he expect to be coming together with Rachel? The younger daughter, the younger maid. So therefore, so that's what he's expecting. What did Lavan do? He switched them around. So he gave the younger maid to the older daughter. Right? So Leah ends up with the younger maid, even though she's older. He really screwed things up, Lavan. So when Leah's going down the aisle, behind her, I guess holding her wedding dress, I don't know, I'm just, behind her is the younger maid, which is who Yaakov would expect to be behind the younger daughter, Rachel. So now let's fast forward. And then Rachel ends up with the older maid. Understand? So now when they're having kids, the maid of Leah, whose name is Zilpah, is actually very, very young because Lavan had put the younger maid with this older daughter. Got it? Quite a confusing story. So Leah names his first child. What does she call him? Timer Leah, verse number 11, Ba God. The word God means luck or mazel. Mazel. Ba God. Luck has come, and so she called his name God. Okay. But if you notice, look in the parentheses in the Hebrew with no vowels. In the parentheses, you'll see it says the letters Beis Gimel Dalet together. Not because doing a Hebrew reading test. The Bible, if you look in the actual Chumash, if you open up the Torah scroll on Shabbos when we read, if you pay attention, if you get to see it there, the word Ba God is not spelled as two words. It's actually combined as one word of three letters. It should be, the way we pronounce it is as two distinct words. We pronounce it, we read it, Ba God. God or Mazel luck has come. But in the spelling in the Torah, it's spelled with one word with three letters together. Why is that? Okay, you're right. Give me 1 minute. You're right. Give me a minute. So let's do what Rashi says. So Rashi gives three explanations on why this child was called God. The first one is, as I said, because it's good luck. Second explanation, according to that Gada, is he was born circumcised. Circumcised. God, from the word like gedud or gedu, cut down the tree. But if that's the answer, Rashi's not sure what's written in one word. So then Rashi gives us a third explanation. Why is it read as one word? But God is from the word bagadata, as to rebel or to cheat, as Vivi correctly said. Meaning Leah is hinting to her husband, by you agreeing and saying yes to marry my maid when I already have children, you cheated on me. You tricked me. I offer my maid, not because you were supposed to say yes. See, women don't know that if you offer something to your husband that you don't want to say yes to, they might not realize that you're actually hinting that's the opposite of what I'm saying. Men are not so sophisticated. So Leah offered her husband, her expecting and hoping that Yaakov would say, no, my darling, all I love is you. I want nothing besides for you. But that's not what happened. Instead, Yaakov said, okay, good idea. And Yaakov thinks he's being a good husband because he's listening to his wife. And really, his wife is upset at him that he agreed to what she said to do instead of actually understanding that she didn't want him to do what she was telling him to do. You understand? We actually pontificate on this for a long time. It's, a lot of marriages go like this. She shouldn't have suggested it. Right. But she's upset at him for saying yes. She's not upset at herself for suggesting it. She's upset at him for agreeing to it. So she calls her son Bagadita, Bagad, that you rebelled against me. You cheated on me by taking this other woman as a second wife, and you weren't satisfied with just me. I find that fascinating. And to be honest, I never fully paid attention. It's in Rashi until I was preparing this. Like I was reading this carefully and I saw it. Okay, anyway. Then Zilpah has another child, a second son, and she calls him. So they're already married. They're already married. And there's only one explanation. At the end of the day, as I said before, this is part of the plan of Hashem. There should be 4 wives to give birth to 12 children. So Leah says, because of my good fortune, for women have declared me fortunate, so she named him Asher. Because this was already the 6th child of the 12 children. Again, as I mentioned, she already prophetically knew there'd be 12 kids. So I already have 6 of them. I'm already a fortunate woman.
How they become so money when it's so much mess? Those are the
So much mess?
Yes, it is. Really, I mean, it's not pure.
Life is messy, my friend. That's one of the differences in Christianity and Judaism. We don't make our heroes into saints and people and virgins. They led messy lives. That's why it's an example for us. Life is messy. Life is not perfect like you. Life is, the rest of us are less perfect. Yeah.
Leah on purpose not to have more children.
That's Dina. She was pregnant with another child, Dina, which is not going to be today's conversation. And when she realized she didn't have another boy, and she would have 7 boys, and Rachel had none, she prayed, and the baby was switched from a boy to a girl in the womb. Okay.
But that was unselfish of her.
Correct. Listen, and Rachel was unselfish too. Rachel gave her the secret code that she should be able to marry.
Nobody, she couldn't ever marry this. She didn't get on.
Correct. Okay, so now, my friends, let's talk about this a little bit. Who are these girls? Before we get to who are these girls, let's just say one more thing. The Zohar tells us that during the mother's lifetimes, during the lifetimes of Rachel and Leah, the Shekhinah rested upon them. But when they died, when Rachel died, the Shekhinah did not depart. The Shekhinah actually went from Rachel to Bilhah, which is why Yaakov moved his bed from Rachel's tent, not to Leah's tent, but to Bilhah. No, he moved it to Bilhah's tent. Reuben got upset and moved it out of Bilhah's tent to his mother Leah's tent. And then Yaakov got upset at Reuben for moving his bed from Bilhah's tent to Leah's tent. I'm mentioning this. I don't want to get to that whole story because it's about Reuben. We talked about the story 2 years ago. But what I'm mentioning, what the Zohar tells us, is that Bilhah had the Shekhinah of Rachel continued on to her. It wasn't like it went away. That Shekhinah rested upon her. She was a holy woman. Okay. So who are these girls? You guys ready to be blown away now? Marcia, you wearing a seatbelt? Wearing a seatbelt. So the Medrash tells us, different opinions tell us, that Lavan actually had two wives himself. One was his primary wife. You have to understand there are many, they're called castes, right? Different levels in society, different rankings of, like today, everyone was happily ever after all equal. Back then, there were different rankings in society, and you were on different castes, they were called. So one wife was his primary wife, and the second wife was either a concubine or it was a maidservant, but it was not a primary wife. His wife gave birth to two girls, Leah and Rachel, and his maid gave birth to two girls, Bilha and Zilpah. So they, what? Like Woody, I don't know, Woody Allen. So, I don't know, but okay, like Woody Allen. So anyway, so what's the point? The point is that Lavan is actually, they're all Lavan's daughters. And Bilha and Zilpah are the half-sisters of Leah and Rachel. But they're the maids who have to serve their half-sisters because their mother was a maid or a concubine. She wasn't a main wife. Of course they knew. It wasn't like a secret thing back then. That's the way things were. So I'll tell you what the difference. There was a concubine or a maid later on. I'll tell you what the difference is, different opinions. But the point is, it's an accepted tradition that Lavan actually had four girls, and all four of these girls are all daughters of Lavan, and they're all biological members of the family of Avraham, which is why they're able to be mothers of the tribes. All of them are able to be mothers of the tribes because all of them are from this same lineage, but just their mothers were different. Their mothers were not the same. Why was Bilhah called Bilhah? So Bilhah was very, very beautiful. She had a stunning beauty, and the word Bilhah means lehibahel, like bahal is when you're confused, when you're shocked. When you see someone so beautiful that you're like in the state of like, wow, I can't believe it. That was Bilhah. That's how beautiful she was. Another commentator says she cried a lot. She didn't let people sleep at night. But that's Bilhah. And Zilpah means to flow. L'zalef. Ziluf is to flow, and that she would cry a lot. Why did she cry a lot? Because Zilpah always thought that she would be a maid of Leah, and Leah also used to cry a lot. Why did Leah cry a lot? She was supposed to marry Esau, because Rivka had two boys, and Yaakov and Esau and Lavan had two girls. So people used to say that the older son of Rivka will marry the older daughter of Lavan, and the younger son of Rivka will marry the younger daughter of Lavan. So the older son of Lavan of Rivka is Esau, and the older daughter is Leah. The older maid daughter is not Bilhah, right? She was the younger one that was switched. It's Zilpah. We don't say Bilhah and Zilpah because that's the order of their marriage. Actually, Zilpah is the older one. So Zilpah will cry just like her mistress sister that would also cry because they both knew together that we're going to end up in the house of Esau. Now, her life doesn't go the way you think because neither ended up in the house of Esau, but they didn't even end up together. Because Zilpah ended up not as the maid of Leah, she ended up being stolen by her father, who doesn't only trick his daughters, he switches around his other daughters that they no longer stay with the daughter that they had grown up with taking care of. Understand? How much he had to confuse and to mess things up to pull off his very manipulative. Yeah, in those days, girls listened to their father. The father said something, and you obeyed. It wasn't America 2020 where parents listen to their kids. No, it was a different world back then. Very different world. Okay, so that's the story. And we've already talked in another class, if you look back, about Lavan and how manipulative he was and how selfish and narcissistic he was to be willing to take. I mean, it's hard to wrap your head around a father who can be that selfish and that narcissistic that he literally switches around his daughters and is willing to play with their happiness and their future and their lives for his own personal gain. I mean, the level of narcissism is literally mind-blowing. And we've done a whole class on Lavan and on this personality, so we're not going to go there now. What we're going to talk about is one famous question, which is, how could Jacob marry all these sisters? He's a tough guy. You shouldn't marry, having more than one wife in general is not a good idea. But now they're sisters, and they're half sisters, and they're maid sisters, and it's like, he ends up with 4 sisters.
Okay, so I can understand how he would marry Rachel because he was tricked with Leah. But the other two,
That's what they did back then.
Yeah, but so saying that's what they did back then. There's one problem with saying that. What's the problem with saying that? Yaakov, the forefathers, kept the Torah even though the Torah had not yet been given. It's a general rule. We know many examples of the Torah where the forefathers kept the Torah even though it hadn't been given. We see an example where Yaakov says like this. Not only that, when Yaakov returns back to Esav, he says, "In Lavan Garti, I dwelled with." And the word is the same letters, numerical value of 613. Garti is Taryag, 613. That is the numerical value. So I lived with Lavan, but means I have all 630 commandments. One of the 630 commandments in the Torah is that a man cannot marry a woman and her sister. You can't marry a woman and her mother, and a woman and her mother and her grandmother, and you can't marry a woman and her sister. So once you marry one woman, the sisters of that woman are now forbidden to you. Right.
forbidden relationships. That was the name of the Torah.
Correct. So how could Yaakov, it's not just how could he marry sisters, it's actually a really important question. Because if Yaakov was spiritually aware of the values and the morals and the ethics and the teachings of the Torah, which he was, how could Yaakov knowingly marry not only 2 sisters, the question about 4 sisters, and say, I'm a religious guy, I'm keeping the whole Torah when he's married to all these sisters? Of course they were sisters. They all knew they were sisters. There was no secret. They all loved their father. The proud daddy of all these girls,
The 2 sisters follow Judaism.
Okay, so one of the answers to explain, according to the Marsha, how was he allowed to marry all these sisters? So a woman goes through a person goes through a conversion process, they're considered a brand new child, like a brand new person, reborn or born for the first. I mean, the soul that the Jewish soul you get when you come out of the mikvah is just like when the fetus comes out of the the fluids of the mother's womb, and the person coming out of the mikvah is a brand new person, and therefore by Jewish law they're no longer related to their previous biological relatives. Spiritually, they've been given a new soul, which is a new identity that they didn't have before. What? Hence, why you concubine? No, hence that they're all new people. They're not sisters anymore. So these 4 girls, all of them grew up in a house of idol worship. Lavan was an idol worshiper. We know this for a fact. Rachel tries to steal her father's idols and all that. So we know that Lavan's an idol worshiper. So these girls, although they had the lineage of Avraham in them, they didn't grow up as Jews. They grew up in a house of idols in Haran, in a very, very evil, despicable, disgusting place in the universe. So when they got married, they went to the mikveh before their marriage and they converted. So once they converted, they're like brand new people. They're not sisters anymore. Okay, that's one answer. You guys like it? We stop. Okay, the Ramban Nachmanides gives another answer, which is not as exciting, but that the patriarchs only kept the laws of the Torah in Israel. It's a whole theory that they only kept the laws in the land of Israel. When they were outside of Israel, they didn't keep it, unless it was a moral teaching. But when he says, I dwell with love and I kept the mitzvahs, he meant I kept the spirit, the moral mitzvahs, like not to steal, etc. But the technical mitzvahs, the ritual mitzvahs, he did not do. Anyway. Another answer from the Maral of Prague is, as I already mentioned before, this is all by Ruach HaKodesh. This is all divine inspiration. So God told Yaakov and the mothers, they all knew, you're meant to marry these women. So when Leah came to Yaakov and said, or when Rachel made, he had Ruach HaKodesh, Yaakov had divine inspiration to understand that God's plan for the Jewish people was that 12 tribes would be born from 4 mothers. But the Rebbe has a beautiful answer. A beautiful, beautiful answer. What's the Rebbe's answer? The Rebbe explains like this. When Yaakov decided to keep all the laws of the Torah, he took himself, he grew like Esav that didn't keep the Torah. He sat and learned for many, many years in the yeshiva of Shem and Aver and from his father, from his grandfather. And Yaakov made a commitment to himself, I'm traveling out of Israel, and I'm going to keep every single mitzvah in the Torah. I'll keep Shabbos, I'll keep kosher, I'll keep the laws of not marrying 2 sisters. All these laws he accepted upon himself. Was he legally obligated by them? Or he chose to conduct himself with a higher level of spiritual, conduct beyond what was required of him? He was choosing to go beyond what was legally required of him. So he had no obligation to keep Shabbat when he's working for his father-in-law. He chose to go above and beyond. Now, you can choose to go above and beyond on your own spiritual observance up to one point. What's the one point when you can't be spiritually strict upon yourself? When it would hurt somebody else. We have an obligation not to hurt someone. So you can't make my spiritual stringency break a mitzvah. You have to break a word, to break your promise. So you have an obligation to do a mitzvah. Let's just say you have an obligation to do a mitzvah, and you have a personal stringency that you accepted upon yourself. You can't allow your personal stringency to break a mitzvah, to break a command. Now, so the 7 Noahide laws and the laws of the world at that time were binding on everyone, including on Yaakov. Yaakov had made a promise to Rachel that he would marry her. Yaakov now to come to Rachel and say, your father's willing to let me marry you, but I'm not going to promise to you because of a personal stringency that I took upon myself. I want to be very, very religious. And I want to keep the laws of the Torah that have not yet been given and that I'm not obligated to keep, but I want to keep them anyway. You know what Yaakov will be doing at that moment? He'll be allowing his own desire for spiritual sanctity and spiritual perfection to ignore the pain and the hurt that he would cause to Rachel by breaking his promise to marry her. Understand? It's a very beautiful idea.
Yes, but what about the other two?
Okay, excellent. I'll get to a second. Very good, very good. So this is a beautiful answer as far as why Yaakov was allowed to marry Leah and Rachel. Even though he personally wanted to keep every law of the Torah, he understood that when it comes to not hurting somebody else, not breaking my promise to Rachel, that I promised her I would marry her. Now she's going to be left alone, abandoned, that nobody wants her. Right? And that will give her tremendous pain. My promise to her is more important than my own desire for my own spiritual perfection, my own spiritual holiness. This is a very, very important lesson.
Or it could have been that he was so in love with her that he was doing.
He could be he was in love with her, but he's point is how could he? The Rebbe is asking halacha. This is a halacha question. The question how you can marry 2 sisters is not just it's gross. It's a halacha question. You're violating Jewish law. What we're explaining now is that from the standards of Jewish law does not want you to be so spiritually selfish, to be oblivious to the impact that your actions will have on the emotional pain of another person. But that only answers, Marsha said correctly, how Yaakov can marry Leah and Rachel, because he had promised Rachel he would marry her. How could he marry Bilha and Zilpah? Right? That's what you were asking. So that's why I told you that according to the Rebbe, the 2 girls, Bilha and Zilpah, were not daughters of a wife of Lavan, or even of a concubine. They were daughters of a slave or a maid. So daughters of a maid or a slave don't get the status of the father. When a child is born a slave, I'll give you an example. Law, if a Jewish slave is intimate with a slave woman, what's the status of the children? The Torah tells us clearly they remain slaves. That's the law. It's in the Torah. Meaning, you follow the status of the mother. So the Jewish man is a slave, a Jewish slave, an evidivri, a Jewish slave, who is given a job by his master to have more children. Those children born to the Jewish father remain non-Jewish slaves like their mother. So the fact that Lavan was the father of Bilha and Zilpah didn't make them full-fledged daughters, because they were not the daughters of a concubine or of a wife of a lower social status, but they were actually daughters of a maid. So they were never really considered sisters all the way. The halachic technical answer as far as the other two girls. Okay, now let's get a little spiritual and with this. So why? I explained to you how he was able to marry these four sisters, right? But now the question is, so if Leah and Rachel give birth to some of the tribes, and Bilha and Zilpah give birth to some of the tribes, why are Bilha and Zilpah not considered the matriarchs of the Jewish people, and Leah and Rachel are considered matriarchs of the Jewish people? Seemingly, Rachel has two kids, and Bilha and Zilpah also have two kids. So why are they not? They're given like no credit, and they don't even get to name the children. The children that we read were named by Leah or by the children are not even given to the credit of her. Why is that? I think that's not fair, right? Why are Leah and Rachel considered matriarchs and Bilha and Zilpah not considered matriarchs? So in Chassidus and Kabbalah it explains that the souls, we have seven, with three fathers and four mothers. Each one of them embodies a specific midah, a specific attribute of the world of Atzilus. So of the world of Atzilus, the world nation. For those who are coming to the world of Kabbalah, you'll know what I'm talking about a little bit more. You have basically Avram is Chesed. Just very, very briefly, my throat's hurting me. Yitzchak is Gvura. Yaakov is Tiferet. What? Yes. So Avram is a man of Chesed, a man of kindness. The fact that a Jew has a desire to be kind, has a desire to be generous, even to people that don't deserve it. Now, some Jews have this misguided kindness and feelings of, even to people that don't deserve it, that people that are a danger and a threat to us, and we want to be kind to them. Where does this come from? It's an attribute that was instilled within us from our forefather, Avraham. The fact that a Jew has a desire for spiritual perfection, has a desire to spiritually elevate ourselves and work on ourselves, and we're never satisfied, we're always yearning for more and more, that's an attribute of the gvura, of the discipline of Yitzchak. The Jew we're descendants. We all inherit the DNA of our parents. We all carry over certain genes, certain mannerisms, and certain styles, personalities that we got from our parents. So every Jew has within us the DNA of Yitzchak, to desire more, to always be looking how to improve, to dig more wells, to accomplish more and more. And every Jew has the attribute of truth, of Yaakov. We have the compassion of Yaakov, that we're Rachmanim ne Rachmanim, we have compassion, etc. So these are traits that we have inherited from our fathers. So too from the mothers, from Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. Each one of them are four different parts of Malchus of Atzilus. We have four parts. You have Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. I'm going to make it very, very simple. There's four parts. Like the four letters of God's names, Yud, Hey, Vav, Hey. So within the attribute of the queen, Malchus is the feminine aspect of the universe, of the world. You know, on Friday night, you have the king and you have the queen, right? And Friday night is about the queen going up to the king. Malchus is the feminine energy of the world of emanation. Trust me on this. So all four matriarchs are parts of this complete Malchus, this emanation of kingdom of the queen that's able to transmit. What is the job of the king? To transmit. The job of Malchus is to take all of the emotions, all the energies of the world of Atzilus and to transmit them out into the next world. Just like a king rules through his mouth. Malchus is the mouth. A king rules through his decrees. Is the woman that can take what the man gave and make it into like the food that the man gave and make the ingredients that the man gave. Make it into a dinner, take the house and make it into a home. That's the touch of the woman who can internalize and make something beautiful. So there's only four parts to Malchus. There's only 4 parts of the Yud Hey Vav Hey, the 4 letters of God. And there's 4 aspects. The aspects are represented by Rachel and Leah, and that's it. So where's Bilha and Zilpah? They are Malchus of the world of Bria. So in the worlds of divine flow of energy down, like we learned this in the Kabbalah classes on Tuesday night, so at least some people know what I'm talking about. You have the highest world, the world of Atzilut, the world of emanation. Below that is a lower world, a world of creation, which is already a world of separation, a world of ego, a world of identity, and all that. So Bilha and Zilpah also have these beautiful, lofty souls. However, they also Malchus are also kingdom or royalty, but not the kingdom or the royalty of the world of emanation, but of the next world, of the lower world. Meaning, in order for Yaakov to give birth to 12 tribes, he needed to have both. In order for the 12 tribes to be born, it could not only be matriarchs of a higher exalted world giving birth to the Jewish people. There had to be a conduit, there had to be a channel to allow the energy of the most supernal, elevated world, the world of Atzilut, the world of emanation, which really I should be explaining better, but we're not. Emanation, which is totally one with its creator. Just briefly, it can't feel separation. The world of Atzilus is no separation from God. Light. How does light come out of a light bulb? It emanates forth from a light bulb, right? If you put something between the light and the light bulb, what do you have? Nothing. Darkness. Light can never exist independently of its luminary. Light exists outside of its source. So when you're in the world of emanation, there's such a strong sense of connection and dependence on my source that the Malchus, the royalty, the spiritual source of the souls of the matriarchs of Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah cannot feel an independence from God. Bilha and Zilpah could. They could feel a sense of independence. They were already able to bring down from this high level into our world without it affecting them. Meaning we have the ability to be unaffected by our mundane surroundings. We have the ability to be living in the physical world and not be affected by the physical world we live in. We're living in the world of creation, a world of separation, a world of self-awareness, self-identity, because unlike the world of emanation that's totally nullified to its source, what's a creation? Something independent, right? Well, creation is I created a table, created a piece of paper, and it stays. I can walk away. The creation stays. So that creation is already a sense of self. Bilha and Zilpah imbued within our world of self-awareness, of ego, of identity, etc., they were able to bring that spirituality that exists in the world of emanation, the world of Atzilus, to bring it down. So that's why they were an integral part of the birth of the Jewish people. Without them, our mothers and our fathers would have all remained spiritual entities, not connected to our world. What Bilha and Zilpah do is they are the ones who are the agents of, the surrogate mother of Rachel and Leah, and the children they give birth to are even named by Rachel and Leah, because Bilha have no unique attribute of their own. They don't have their own identity, their own ideas. They are the conduit for the miracle of childbirth, the miracle of the born. That miracle comes about through Bilha and Zilpah. Lesson for us. Some of us have very holy, lofty souls. And we're souls like Sarah and Rivka and Rachel and Leah. We have souls that come from the highest levels of Atzilus. And we have a spiritual sensitivity. And we have an inherent awareness of our spiritual source and an inherent awareness of our Creator. And we naturally feel close and connected to Hashem. And then, some of us, from a world of creation, we're much more physical. We're not so spiritually sensitive. We're not so spiritually aware. We're not so, we're sitting in shul and just suddenly feel an excitement. Then we hear the songs and we feel a tingling going down our spine. We're sitting there, we're kind of bored. It's like, it means nothing to us. We're souls of a physical world. We're not souls of a spiritual world. Bilha and Zilpah were such souls. The birth of the tribes of Israel, the continuation, the creation of a nation, that only can take place in completion with higher souls, but that coming down, coming into reality, coming into expression, being born and being conceived and being brought into the world through the physical people, through the physical souls. And that is our inspiration for us. It's a story of ordinary people doing extraordinary things, and people who are not so naturally spiritual, who can still bring tremendous spirituality to our physical world. Okay, my friends. Good night.